Oh, hello, everyone. Welcome. It is Wednesday, December 21st, 2022, here in the Dallas, Texas area. On a beautiful day, it is sunny. Highs are going to be in the lower 50s. And I know that there's a cold front coming through tomorrow. Tomorrow night, I think Friday morning is supposed to drop to like 7 degrees, but right now it's nice. and nice to have no humidity in Texas and it's 51 degrees. I'll take that any and all day long. Of course, I grew up in the Midwest in Indiana where it would get cold and it would get down below zero. So I know that there's a lot of people that are struggling right now with freezing cold temperatures, and that's not fun. Not fun for the animals either that have to endure that. So, anyways, our breakthrough tour continues. February the 18th will be in Houston, Texas at the Courtyard at the Woodlands up on the north side of Houston, a wonderful, beautiful area. And then March will be in Waco, Texas, April 15th and 16th in Merkel, Texas at the Fountain Gate Church, and then June the 10th back in Dallas at the Courtyard in Plano. So, topic of the day is, do you want respect out of fear or love? And it's interesting because a lot of times people will say they want to be respected, and I believe everyone does, both men and women. I know there's been books written about love and respect, and we all want to be loved. We all want to be respected. That's, for sure. But do you know that if a person has not been healed of their wounds or delivered, they're not going to love you or respect you? Now, you may be able to carry an authority with you, and that you may raise your voice, you may intimidate, you may bully, and then out of the fear, they might respect that aspect of you. But in their heart of hearts, do they truly respect you in a loving way? No, of course not. So there's a lot of times you're in relationships with people. It could be your father and mother that one of them bullied you, one of them said negative words to you and it hurt you. Of course, I deal with this all the time in inner healing and deliverance sessions. Lots of people, they get hurt and wounded, and their dad, we'll say their dad, is demanding that they get respected by their children. Well, if the child doesn't feel any love from the father, then it's really hard for them to respect out of love. It's really impossible. They can respect out of fear, but you being the bully or you being the demanding person, the aggressor, is that what you really want? Do you want respect with a person that fears you? Now, if you're not healed and delivered, you're going to have some aspect of your soul that will be tormented by demonic spirits. And so those demons would say yes to that question. Of course, I want people to respect me out of fear. But in the reality of the situation, it's not the way that it should be. Jesus was the example. When he came to earth, were there people that disrespected him? Absolutely, positively. The Pharisees and the scribes, they hated him. They were jealous of him. So even though he was perfect and he could irk their demons and in fact he did, he would confront them and they would debate him on things. Demons love to debate and try to accuse their victims of things. If a person's right standing with the Lord and a person's not right standing, they're right standing with the enemy, then the person that's right standing with the enemy all day long would love to debate, would love to accuse, provoke, and they're very angry at the peace that the person has that is living a lifestyle congruent with the Lord. So I can speak from some experience on this. Before I went through healing and deliverance, I was more demanding, I was more selfish, I wanted my own way, and I would have hurt people in my life, would have hurt my ex-wife, would have hurt my children. I wasn't the way that I should have been. And once I went through healing and deliverance, I changed dramatically. And one of the things that I noticed about the changes in my life was I was way more patient. And they call that long suffering, where someone that treats you not the way that they should, you can still love them and not get triggered and not take an offense. You can be disrespected, and that's okay. because that person knows who's being disrespected, knows that the person that's disrespecting them is not in the right space with the Lord. They're hurt, they're wounded, they're triggering, and they're going to come against a person that is more loving and more the way that they should be. It's because of oftentimes the demonic spirits in them are triggering them, and they want to lash out at the person that is more healed, more delivered. So anyway, I saw myself change. It was very dramatic, and I had a son that was extremely not the way that he should be. He was hurt, he was wounded. For 10 years, he disrespected me horribly, and I didn't deserve it. Of course, I wasn't healed and delivered for a good portion of that, but the latter, what would have been the latter year of his life before he got delivered, I went through deliverance myself. And so I could take a lot of the disrespect that he was giving to me. Some of the disrespect was really bad, having milk thrown at me and being punched and spit at and totally disrespected. But I knew that he was off, that he was hurt by the enemy, and he was still being triggered. So when he was finally delivered, the Lord taught me through a mentor how to take authority over my son. He was still living with me. He was 18, so I still had some authority over him. I asked if I could pray for him. He said yes. I just said, I command every spirit not of the Lord be gone from you in Jesus' name. And he dramatically changed overnight. I got my son back finally after 10 years of hell. And he was respectful to me. And I could talk to him, and I was like, oh my gosh. But during the interim, from the time that I was delivered until he got delivered, he was still disrespectful. He was playing video games all the time and mocked me, but I could take it because I was delivered. I could take the disrespect. Similar to what you think about Jesus. Jesus took a lot of disrespect, and he didn't deserve any of that. Of all people in the world, he deserved the most respect and honor, but he didn't get it from a lot of the people that weren't healed and delivered themselves. So if you can understand people that are more demanding of wanting to be respected, they're more controlling, they hurt you with their words, it's because they've been hurt, they're not healed, they're not delivered, and they're lashing out, and then they hurt the people, oftentimes their spouses or their children, and then those people don't have the respect for them that they want. So they may want to have respect out of fear, but what kind of respect is that? In their heart of hearts, it's like, wow, I'm not going to respect you. You just said some horrible things to me, or you called me a name, or you disrespected, or you yelled, you raised your voice. So it's very, militaristic. And if it's militaristic, the demand for respect is the people that are under them are going to feel a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, and they may obey what they say, but in their heart of hearts, they know it's not right. They know that they're not being treated the way that they should. So that person who is demanding and commanding that needs to be healed of their wounds and delivered of their demonic spirits so that they can be calm and loving and the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. Then they'll speak loving words, kind words, encouraging words to their spouse, to their children, or in front of their children. The children will observe that and they'll say, wow. And then the respect that they want will come because they've changed. That's why a lot of people that struggle with, say, the spirit of Jezebel are very controlling, very demanding, very mean, very selfish, lie, and they trigger a lot. Trigger, because of all these wounds that have not been healed. And they think that they're right. And they're like, well, gee, if you just do what I say, then I wouldn't get triggered and get mad and get angry. When in reality, they need to get healed and delivered, and they wouldn't say what they said. They would be loving, they would be gentle, they would be kind. So people who have unhealed wounds and demons will never respect those who may deserve the honor and respect. So you think about, again, Jesus. Jesus deserved, more respect than anyone, and the Pharisees hated him. And if you think that you deserve more respect, and yet you're not treating the people that are your spouse and your children the way that Christ would treat them, you're not going to get the respect normally, because those people will just say, I don't want anything to do with you. They'll want to leave you. They'll want to walk away. They'll want to say, hey, listen, this is horrible. You're not treating me the way that Christ would love the church. And they don't see it in themselves. And I think about it myself. When I went through the healing and deliverance, then the Lord eventually, he took me into a relationship that was 6 years where I got nothing but disrespect and mocking and treated horribly for 6 straight years, and I couldn't tell anybody. That was a part of changing me. And I didn't like to go through it. Nobody likes to be abused. Nobody likes to have verbal abuse hours and hours every day. And the Lord told me I would love this woman like Christ loved the church. I didn't know what that meant until after I said I do. Hours later, on the first night of being married, she triggered and went off, and it went on for hours. And then that continued on pretty much a daily basis for 6 years. I couldn't tell anybody. But that was a part of what the Lord needed me to go through and endure so that I could minister to others. Because when you've gone through an extreme abusive situation, disrespect, horribleness, where you are in the process of being able to take it, you're essentially getting stronger in who you are in Christ. And then once you've gone through that process and you've not triggered, you've not gone off, you've not been mean back to the person, then you are stronger, you are more like Christ, and then the Lord can use you in a ministry, very strong ministry, that you're dealing with people that are hurt and wounded, and they may lash out at you, they may say things to you. I'll have people from time to time that will make these negative comments on Facebook, YouTube, and it doesn't faze me. I just know that they're not healed, they're not delivered, they're not in the right space with the Lord. And sometimes I can respond back to them if they're open to it, but many times their demons are just being raging within them, and you have to simply block them because they're not ready. So I'll say this, it was a great example, it's a true story. Had a guy whose wife had watched the ministry for, I don't know, a couple of years. Actually, no, it was his fiance. And he didn't like me. He didn't like the message. It was because he was not healed yet of his wounds. He wasn't delivered yet. So the demonic spirits kept causing him to resist and not like me because my message was directly calling him out on how he behaved. And so he didn't want anything to do with me. He didn't like me, hated me, whatever. And then he was getting ready to get married to her. And then she reached out and said, listen, I don't think I can go through with this because he is very prideful, extremely prideful. And so we prayed, Lord, do whatever it takes. Well, then eventually, shortly after that, before they got married, he got COVID, was hospitalized, and was getting sicker and sicker and sicker, heading towards potential death. And then at that point, he wanted my number and he wanted me to take him through a session. So he started to change in his heart. And then I took him through a session. And then he got delivered. And then they got married. And he's treating her the way that he should. But he changed, and that's what changed his opinion of me. So people that aren't healed and delivered yet are going to trigger around people who are healed and delivered. Again, we know that Jesus had a lot of haters that hated him. They weren't healed, they weren't delivered. And I wouldn't have liked my own message either. If I wasn't healed and delivered, I wouldn't listen. I would not like me because I was still struggling with pornography and triggers and things that I would have dismissed this message because I was directly behaving that way. So that's why it's very common to see people that will not respect a person that's actually doing what God has called them to do, has a very loving heart, treats their wife and children the way that they should be treated behind closed doors. The people that aren't healed and delivered won't like them, and they'll stay away from them, or they'll make things up, and they'll accuse and gossip and make things up and so forth. And that person that's doing the ministry won't be respected. Now, there's some, of course, that have behaved in ways they shouldn't, and therefore it's very hard for people to respect that. I get that. I understand that. But let's say that you are living a lifestyle that is godly, that has the fruit of the Spirit, and you're walking in humility, you're walking in sexual purity, then you would think that most people would say, wow, we're going to respect that person. But no, there are people that aren't healed, aren't delivered, and they're not going to like the message. So the same thing applies if you are married to someone, and we see this all the time, where you have one person that's more the aggressor, has more anger outbursts, more demands. They're not fun to be around, and they're married to a person that tends to be hurt because maybe they've been married for 15, 20 years and they're tired of taking it. And they're like saying, enough is enough is enough. I'm not going to take this anymore. And kudos to them for staying in it for that long. You know, if the Lord's called you to stay in that long, then you stay in it. If the Lord said enough is enough, they're not going to change, it's time to move on, then you move on. You do what the Lord said. And so, you know, our heart at the Ministry of Restored to Freedom is to try to get people, all people, healed and delivered. But I know full well they got a free will, and percentage of them won't do it. And then a percentage of them, they'll keep their demons, they'll continue to trigger, act like they're a victim, and they will not be respected by anyone. And do you really want to be respected by someone that's afraid of you? Well, if you have demons, you do. But most people truly understand the answer to that is no, absolutely not. So when you change yourself, you can only control yourself, cannot make another person get delivered. But if you look in the mirror at yourself and say, Lord, is there anything in me that I need to change? And if there is, then be quiet and listen. Let the Lord speak to you and block out the demonic spirits trying to tell you that you're fine, you're good to go. It's all your spouse's fault. It's all your children's fault. Gee, if your children would just respect you, everything would be great. But the children have been hurt and wounded by you because of what you said and what you've done to them, and therefore they have no respect for you. So you would much rather have yourself change. I mean, this is the answer to it. Get yourself changed by forgiving people who have hurt you in your past, by repenting for your pride, by repenting for your sin, by humbling yourself before the Lord. Essentially inner healing and deliverance. And that is a process. It can take some people one time, but normally 99% have to go through the process of forgiving people little by little throughout their life, and repenting for their pride, repenting for their sin, not wanting to sin sexually, not wanting to lust after people, not wanting to masturbate, not wanting to look at pornography, and getting those wounds healed and being delivered. So it may take them a year, it may take them 2 years, but eventually as they change, then they will love their spouse the way that Christ loved the church. They will love their children the way they should, and then the children's heart will be restored. Malachi 4, 5, and 6 talks about him sending Elijah before the great and dreadful day of the Lord to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the children to the fathers. And that's what happens when we get healed and we get delivered. Then we can say, I'm so sorry to our children. I'm so sorry for hurting you, for being harsh with you, for talking down to you, for disrespecting you. Will you please forgive me? And then the child's heart starts to come back and gets healed and says, what? Are you serious? Are you really apologizing? Wait a minute. And they don't normally believe it at first. It may take them a couple weeks for you to consistently stay in that behavior. And then when you do, they know that you're real, then, oh my gosh, now they respect you. So it starts with, normally, whoever is the aggressor, husband or wife in the home. Of course, there's Jezebels that are in women, and there's Jezebels in men. But they all have the same characteristics, the same traits. That's why we know it's a spirit, because they all behave the same way. They're very demanding, very controlling, very prideful, very arrogant, sexually impure, and they don't know how to love. They don't know how to respect other people, and it's because they've been hurt and they've been wounded. So again, we are to love people like Christ and become a servant to others, like Jesus did. So a lot of people that struggle, obviously, with respect issues is because they're not willing to serve anyone. They want to be served like they're the king. And when you get healed and delivered, you want to serve others. You want to say, oh, hey, honey, can I make you some coffee this morning? Without expecting anything. Hey, honey, I'd like to make you lunch today because I love you. You know, and then it goes hand in hand. You treat each other with love and respect. And then everything changes. Now there's peace in the home. Now the children feel peace, and then they love and then they respect the mom or the dad that is had not been treating them, you know, the right way. So what does the Bible say? 2 Timothy 2:23-26. But avoid foolish and ignorant disputes, knowing that they generate strife. And a servant of the Lord must not quarrel, but be gentle to all, able to teach, patient, in humility correcting those who are in opposition, if God perhaps will grant them repentance, so that they may know the truth, that they may come to their senses and escape the snare of the devil, having been taken captive by him to do his will. So those people that are very demanding, very controlling, wanting their own way constantly, demanding respect, it's because they've been taken captive by the enemy. And they're convinced that they're a victim, they're convinced that they're doing things right, and it's really hard for them to walk in humility. Uh, they, they're not doing it. They're not humbling themselves before the Lord. They're not loving their spouse like Christ. They're not loving their children like Christ. So they end up sabotaging their own marriage. They sabotage their family. And then they have a whole bunch of kids that they've fathered or mothered that have been hurt and been wounded. And then they want nothing to do with the parent. And then as they grow into adults, they leave. And then they never have a relationship anymore until that parent can say, I'm sorry for how I treated you, and own it. And that takes a big man, a very strong man and or woman, to do that. And there's a lot that never get there. And they do not want to look in the mirror and accept the responsibility that they're the ones that ruined their marriage and their family. And then the fallout is their children. And it's a sad situation. And that describes why the church is a mess. It's because there's so many wounded people that have been hurt, angry, bitter, have demonic spirits, trigger, selfish, sexually impure, and you're not going to get respected. So ultimately, and I've seen this in my own home. When I was healed, I was delivered, I treated people that didn't matter if they treated me with respect or not. I loved them and I respected them. And then little by little, those that I had hurt respected me. And then those that I didn't hurt, they respected me all along because I treated them with value. Some of them were hurt deeply by other people. And typically hurting people will hurt people. So you have to sometimes give them grace and love them and overlook the way that they treat you and trigger. And then in hopes that they'll see the error of their ways and they'll say, oh my gosh, why am I treating you this way? Hurting people hurt people. That's why when two people get married and they've been hurt by their fathers and mothers in sexual violations, if they're not healed, they're being set up to fight and strive and argue. That's why every single pastor needs to take people through healing and deliverance before they marry them. Because if they don't, they'll have demonic spirits, they'll have triggers, and they will go off on each other and they will begin to develop anger for one another, hatred and bitterness. And then they'll end up having offspring, children, that will end up being hurt and being wounded. So that is the truth. And when people get healed and get delivered, they change. And then they'll say positive words to one another, encouraging words, being thankful and grateful for things. And then the children will feel at peace. They will no longer feel insecure. There's so many insecure children that have been hurt by wounded parents. And if the church would just do their job and get people healed and delivered, if the pastors would wake up and realize that everyone needs healed and delivered, even if you've asked Jesus into your heart, you can pray in tongues, doesn't matter, you still need to get delivered from those demonic spirits and get healed from those wounds. And then you're a different person. And then you will get the respect that you want. When people are healed and delivered, they will honor. I have so many people around the world that have great respect for me, and I thank the Lord for that, because I didn't ever plan to do any type of ministry. And a lot of them are saying, thank you so much, because my life has changed and I now have peace and I don't struggle with sexual impurity, and now I have a wife and or a husband that we both have been healed and delivered, and now we love one another and we love our children. And then you get the love and the respect that you want. Anyone that demands respect normally is in a place where they need to get healed and delivered first. And then that will come. So, alrighty. I'm planning, as far as next week, not to do any lives, because it's the week between Christmas and New Year's and my birthday. So it'll be touch and go if I do any tomorrow or the next day. I know it's supposed to get really cold here tomorrow night, and just for really just one night, and then get back to more normal by next week. So, but I'll let you know. All right, we'll see ya. Love ya.